Good evening. Welcome to the Tuesday, September 12th, 2017 School Committee meeting, Southbridge Public Schools at the Robert G. McKinnon Council Chambers. Could I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Bishop.
Present.
Ms. Duval.
Present.
Mr. Lazo.
Excused.
Dr. Page.
Present.
Ms. Peliquin.
Present.
Ms. Ryan.
Present.
Mr. Tomo.
Present.
6 present, 1 excused.
Thank you. Could I ask all of us to join in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Public input. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address the school committee this evening? We ask you to come forward if there's anybody who would like to address the school committee. And is there anyone who would like to address the school committee? Seeing none, we will move on to agenda item number 4, discussion of the minutes of August 15th joint school committee meeting. Are there any corrections or additions anybody would like to point out? If not, let's move on to the August 15th meeting of the Joint Town Council and Southbridge School Committee. Does anybody have any corrections, additions, or deletions they'd like to bring forth at this time? If not, thank you. We're going to move on to old business. Subcommittee assignments. Do you want to handle those?
Yes. So thank you, Mr. Bishop. So as I mentioned at our last meeting, we would like to have members of the school committee serve on subcommittees, particularly the budget subcommittee and the curriculum subcommittee, really so that you have more insight as to the operations, both in curriculum and in budget for the district, and to be able to give more feedback and input, and then to be able to report out back to the whole school committee as to what we discuss in those subcommittee meetings. There are things that I'm very excited and anxious to show you and to have you learn more about sort of what's improving in the school system, and really to give you an opportunity to ask questions and to go deeper into those things. So, Mr. Bishop, since I'd asked about this last time, I appreciate that you've worked with the committee members and proposed members to those 2 subcommittees. And so would you mind just reading out the people who you've been in touch with for those committees?
Thank you. I did speak with everyone, I believe, just about. I tried to reach out to everyone. On the budget subcommittee will be myself, Scott S. Lazo, Jacqueline Ryan, and as an alternate member will be Spiro Tomo. On the curriculum advisory, we have Dr. Raymond Page, Tanya Duval, Amelia Peliquin, and as an alternate, Jacqueline Ryan. We also, did you want to talk about the roundtable?
Certainly. So we were looking for 2 members to serve on the roundtable, which are meetings in the later part of the afternoon with a real community focus, and again, to represent the school committee in those meetings.
Great. And I reached out, and Dr. Ray Page will be doing it along with Jacqueline Ryan. I want to thank those because it is an odd hour of the day for people with jobs. All right, thank you, and we're looking forward to getting those committees up and running, see if we can work more collaboratively with the receiver.
Absolutely. You'll hear from Maureen soon to begin to schedule them, so looking forward to getting them underway. The next item on the agenda.
Oh, that's right.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. New business, out-of-state field trip requests.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. So we have 2 of our faculty with us here tonight. To begin with, we have a proposal for a middle school field trip to Costa Rica in the spring of 2018. And Mr. Juan Hernandez is here with us tonight. So Mr. Hernandez, if you wouldn't mind coming up to the microphone. Be careful, there are a lot of cords on the floor there, so just watch your step as you come on up. But it'd be great if you could introduce yourself and then tell the committee more about the proposed trip that you have. And committee members, as a reminder, I want these field trips to come before you so that you're aware that we are proposing, I think, very exciting opportunities for our students, but I think we all need to have the mindset of we're working together to keep our students safe on these field trips and on these opportunities. So I would appreciate if there are questions that you would have about these trips to please do so, and then that will help to influence my official approval of the trips once the paperwork is in and I'm able to offer that approval or denial of the request. So I really appreciate your kind of constructive and critical lens on these exciting opportunities for students that we all want to make sure that we take our students out into the world, but we want to make sure we do it safely. So, Mr. Hernandez, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me tonight, and
This is Mr. Figueroa, that is coming from the math department. I'm Juan Hernandez. I'm the current world language department head. And if you allow me, please, to hand out the proposals that an EF has prepared for us.
Thank you.
And while that's being passed out, Mr. Hernandez, I apologize. My notes say Costa Rica, but I see that the proposal is.
Yeah, that's a correction. That was the original plan, but we changed our mind and we thought that it would be better for us to start in Europe with Spain and then eventually branch out to other Spanish-speaking countries in Latin America, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic. But this is basically a project that we've been thinking about for the last year, talking to different consultants, different agencies, and this is a proposal that EF prepared for us. The whole idea behind it is for us to bring a cultural exposure to our students, and we provide the language experience, and we know from traveling to other countries that being there, immersing the language in the culture, and can become a life-changing experience for them. So this is something that we want to provide to our students. It will be on a 2-year cycle, meaning that if you guys approve it, if we get the permission from you, we'll be initiating our first trip in 2 years, and we'll be conducting the trips every 2 years, so we can have plenty of time to do the fundraising and get all the paperwork in place and make sure that we're doing things correctly. And the whole idea behind this is we have one language, 21 different countries to explore, and we want students to be part of that. If you want to go in different schools throughout Massachusetts and throughout the United States, you find out that most districts have an international tour and programs, and we want to launch the first one in Southbridge as being part of the World Language Department. So we're basically looking for your endorsement, your permission, and we can open up the floor for questions about the insurance, about procedures, about how we came up with the idea, and price, cost, whatever you guys have in mind or would like to find out a little bit more about. We are open to receive any questions or concerns.
Mr. Bishop.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead, Doc.
Thanks, Mr. Bishop. Mr. Hernandez, if you wouldn't mind, would you be able to walk us back through just the dates and some more of the logistics about the tour itself?
Of course, yeah. The original plan is to take students to Spain and in Europe and within 2 years. And if you go through the proposal, the most important pages that we need to keep in mind is on page number 2, which talks about the accreditation of the program and how students can receive credits for going through this experience. And page 3 basically outlines the whole general liability policy and how the experience is also insured through an EF. Page 4 basically provides a structure, a before, a during, and an after. And so students can get ready before the experience. Once they are there, they can then be exposed to the cultural experience, and then when they come back, they can write a report or do a specific assignment that they can present to the district, to the school committee, if you so desire. Page 5 offers the programming, the itinerary, how many days we're going to be spending in Spain, and what are some of the sites and some of the activities that we're going to be engaging in. And if you guys turn to page 8, and they offer a breakdown of the costs. And at the bottom, you have the person that is our tour consultant that has been basically helping us to put the package together. And that's the proposal that we have put together so far. And we haven't moved ahead with all the pieces because we wanted to make sure that we get your permission and your approval first. But that's what we have so far. Looking into an April vacation 2019. Yep.
Are there any questions? Mr. Tomo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Mr. Hernandez, nice to see you again. How many students are we looking at?
We want to start with 18.
18?
18.
And we're going to have the proper chaperone to student ratio in terms of
It will
chaperones?
be one chaperone per 6 students. That will be
So
the
you'll
ratio.
meet that?
That's right. It will be myself, Mr. Figueroa, and Ms. Vasquez, and we have a decent amount of traveling experience to Asia, Latin America, Europe, so we feel comfortable with each other, and we think that we can provide that platform that the students need to have a successful experience.
Could we, maybe at the end of this trip, maybe have a couple of students come up with you and share their experience
That would
with
be
us?
great. I think that should be planned. That should be part of the plan, and it should be mandatory for some students to put a project together, like a PowerPoint presentation, and share their experiences and bring something of what they have learned to you guys, so you can, assess the validity of the experience. Definitely.
Thank you.
Anyone have any other questions? Dr. Page?
Yeah, I'm just curious as to what was the basis for the target number of 18 students?
What was that?
The basis for the target number of 18
We want
students?
to start small, and because it's only the 3 of us, we want to make sure that we are successful initially, and then if we get a bigger interest and some students would like to participate, in the subsequent years, then we can expand it. But we want to make sure that we start, with the right plan, and that it is successful before we actually expand it to a bigger amount of students.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess a follow-up is what would you do if you said twice that number of students expressed interest in it?
And I think we'll have to tell them to wait until the next cycle, unfortunately. But we want to start small. We don't want to bring 35 students, 14 students being the first experience. I don't think that's safe. And so we want to start small. And then eventually, if we get a bigger group, we can talk about it, but we want to start very small. Yeah.
Okay. The only comment that I have is, having been a person who participated as a chaperone and a parent at the time when we went to the Italy trip, we had about 60 students and I think 30 parents or chaperones. And my view of that, it was an absolutely fantastic experience for the students and the chaperones, and it really is a very nice way to open their eyes to things in the rest of the world, and I'm very happy that you're pushing to provide that opportunity.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure that it's done in such a way that it's accessible to the people that really want to be able to take advantage of
Absolutely.
it. Is
Absolutely.
my view on that. So thank you.
Juan, anybody else have any questions? Go ahead, Mr. Duval. Ms. Duval.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. My concern is it just Spanish people, speaking people that's going to be going?
No, it will be everyone involved in the Spanish learning experience. It will be for English speakers. If you are a heritage speaker, native speaker, it will be open to all the students that are enrolled in a Spanish class.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Juan, is this price going to pick up right at the high school? I would assume. Is that right from the high school, but door to door?
20,
or do we
the
need
price
to,
that you saw there, yes.
Is the buses to get to Boston? I assume you're flying out of Boston. I don't know. Maybe
Yes,
that's a
most
crazy
likely.
assumption.
Yep.
Well, I think it's great. I mean, EF is a top-notch company. I'm familiar with them. We've had many school groups over the years go out of Southbridge High with EF. And this is a wonderful opportunity. I applaud you for taking the initiative. And because it is, you're going to lose a couple of years off your life if we get everything up and going. So I hope you can find 18 students that are willing to raise that kind of money to go on this trip. I think it's great. And I thank you on behalf of the community, on behalf of the community for your efforts to better give our students better opportunities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next request is from Mr. Hatch, who is also here this evening. And so, Mr. Hatch, if you wouldn't mind coming up, your proposal is a little bit more in the future. I do believe that you'd be looking at a spring of 2019 trip, but wanting to get the green light now in order to be able to do the planning for that trip as well.
Thank you.
So I apologize, I am only a one-man show. My name is Jim Hatch. I am the math department chairperson at the high school. And my proposal came from the kids. I feel like I'm speaking to the choir here when I tell you how amazing our student body really is. And one thing that completely changed my life forever was a phone call that I received from Ms. Earls a couple of years ago asking if I've ever given class advisor a thought, because they needed somebody to be the freshman class advisor at the time. So I've been with these kids now, this is my third year as their class advisor, and we're planning our senior year already. We're trying to provide these kids with a senior year that they're going to remember forever, and that can go down in history at Southbridge. We're working on a couple really big names for our keynote address for the graduation, and this particular proposal is for our senior class trip. So we started throwing some ideas out there, and the kids really wanted to go to Disney because many of them never have been. And so we just started throwing around some numbers, making some phone calls, and trying to figure out if this was even possible for our students. And what I'm finding out now is some of the costs that I've received from the travel company that we'll be using. It's about half the price of what many schools in our area have been paying to take a senior class trip to Disney. So I guess some of the details, the trip itself, excluding transportation, is $650. We'll be doing quad occupancy to reduce the rate of that. The plan is to go down the day after finals end for them. It would be a 6-day trip. We would bus down to avoid the fear of flying, make sure everyone has an opportunity to participate if they would like to, and plus taking the bus is a lot less expensive than flying. So it'd be a 24-hour trip down on the bus. We would be down there. We'd have 4 full days in Disney. This price includes all meals. It includes dinner at Forrest Gump Shrimp Company as a class. It would include a travel video at the end. The travel company would actually send people to us and actually record the video for us, put it on a DVD, and every kid would get their own DVD memento. We would also have the opportunity to design our own T-shirts that we would wear, probably first day, last day type of thing. We'd have 4 days in the park. We'd leave around 5 o'clock on the 5th day, 24 hours back. We'd arrive back at Southbridge High School around 6 or 7 o'clock on that Monday, 5 days before graduation. So we'll have plenty of time to rehearse and make sure that we have a phenomenal graduation. The one thing that I'm up against is to find enough chaperones, because it would have to be parents, and they would also have to pay a portion of their wage. So the last page of the proposal includes everything that comes with it. And we'll get one complimentary package for every 20 students that go. And so my thought is to apply that to the chaperones, and then I was looking at a 1-to-6 or a 1-to-8 ratio. I was thinking 1-to-8 primarily because of the quad occupancy. Each chaperone could be responsible for 2 of the rooms in terms of where they're going to go each day. So the 4 days that we're down there, we would have unlimited access to the 4 parks. They would open it up early for us, keep it open late for us on a given night. And the kids, are just really excited about it. So, don't think I forgot
Have
it.
any questions? Ms. Duval?
Ms. Duval wants to be a chaperone.
Well, I don't know, but that seems pretty cheap for this program. Is there any would there be any upgrades, or how many buses can go?
And that's, so in talking to the travel company, it's the $650, which does include everything except transportation. And so we're looking at around $200 per person for transportation. So overall, the trip will cost about $850. And the fundraising is in place where any particular kid without a lot of extra effort at all could pretty much pay for his entire trip. But in terms of upgrades, there's really no need. I think this particular package includes everything that the students will want to see.
Thank you.
Mr. Tomo?
So you'll be there for actually 4 full days.
Correct. We arrive around 7 o'clock on day
Okay.
1, and we leave around 5 o'clock on day 4.
Well, that was my only concern. It seemed that, with the fact you have to drive down, 24 hours drive back, and that time period in between, I thought maybe it was only 3 days, it was kind of rushing. But
No,
if you're
it's-
comfortable with this.
Right. We planned on 4 days so that every group has the opportunity to visit each of the parks.
Yeah.
So with 4 parks, we're wiping out the water parks. Honestly, that was kind of my idea, my thought, more of a safety thing. I just don't like being that far away from home with a bunch of other parents, students, and being in a water park. And so we're going to limit it to the 4 major parks.
I just wanted to make sure you had enough days there to really enjoy
Make
it,
it worth
because
it.
some may never have the opportunity to go back, so, and weather permitting, I hope.
Right. Hurricane permitting. It's not during hurricane season, so that's good.
Thank you. I do have some concerns.
Okay.
Okay, I've probably traveled more with students than anybody sitting here, both in the country as well as internationally. I have a major concern about the cost of transportation.
Okay.
I think your figure is very low. I think, have you priced out busing to move, to take a charter for that distance? Have you got any prices on that?
Yeah, so the $200 figure came through email from because we have an option of doing our own transportation or asking them to provide it for us. So the $200 figure is a figure that they actually gave me. I did some searching, and in terms of, some of the bus companies, the tour companies have the calculators online that you can type in the number, where you're going, dates, and all that stuff. And I think the highest I saw was about $275 per person. So we're still kind of within that number.
Okay, well, I'm just going to defer to Dr. Johnston that I still think that's a very low estimate, okay? Whenever you take a bus over 10 hours, you need a double driver on there. I mean, there are laws that govern transportation of anybody, especially students, and I really think the transportation costs are grossly underestimated at this time. Okay, so and we got plenty of time here. I mean, we're talking about a year and a half.
Yep. No, I want to hear the concerns. I want to hear things
I
to think
have
about.
moved students all over the country, as I said, and
Yeah.
I think your figure for transportation is very, very low. And I just want everybody to be upfront with that. I want to be right up front that that's my experience speaking. Okay, so.
I appreciate that.
And I think to that end, if you don't mind, that what we'd want to do then is to, I think with some interest from the committee and from myself, giving you the go-ahead to explore this further, and then to come back with maybe a more specific cost estimate around the transportation in particular would be useful.
Right. I think, in order to lock in the figure for the trip itself, excluding transportation, they were looking for a very minimal deposit by next Friday because it's so far in advance. If we do explore further, which is fine, there's a risk of that cost going up a little bit. I mentioned that because I spoke to my travel representative today, who actually is working from home because they're without power from Hurricane Irma, because their offices are in Florida also. And he told me that once the approval is given, before I lay it out to parents, before I do anything else, he would book it all for me and issue a complete 100% contract with all that pricing is figured in. So I can go back to him tomorrow and see if that's something he can provide for me, a little bit more detailed. And with the cost of transportation, we're also looking at, if a bus can hold up to 55 people and we have 65 that want to go, well, now I need 2 buses, and I think that's where costs can really skyrocket unless we go with maybe a couple smaller buses. So I guess it depends on how many people we're also going to have.
Right.
Okay. I would just ask you to, review the cost before. Again, this is your call. This isn't our call.
Sure. But it's why I want this input, and I appreciate your critical lens there, Mr. Bishop. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hatch will follow up.
Okay.
New business, item B, school committee input on qualities and characteristics of new receiver.
So, Mr. Bishop, I'd like to welcome Mr. Matt Brunel up to the microphone. And I mentioned the last time that I was here that Mr. Brunel is engaging our school community and the Southbridge community as a whole in a discussion about what are the qualities and characteristics that the community would like to see in the next receiver. And we are using that information. Mr. Brunel will actually aggregate it and provide us with written feedback of what he's hearing through these various engagement opportunities in order to help us develop the job posting, help us with who we're talking to about the position, and the interview questions that we will ultimately use when we go to interview the applicants, so that we really have the voice of Southbridge right at the forefront of the work that we'll be doing to select the next receiver for the district. So Mr. Brunel is here tonight. I had sent an email ahead of time through Ms. Gullickson for you all to be aware that Mr. Brunel would be coming and asking you the questions of the qualities and characteristics that you would like to see in the next receiver, so that this body has an opportunity to provide that input, the same input that our parents are being asked to provide, that our teachers, our union leaders, our students are also being asked to provide. And we also have several community meetings planned as well coming up within the next 2 weeks. So we want to have this kind of 2-week listening period around this topic, and then taking the information that we gather through this process to then lay out an interview and search process that would begin in October. So really welcome Mr. Brunel here tonight, and would stop and just ask if there are any questions from the members, and then I'd love to turn it over to Mr. Brunel, who can ask this committee a series of guiding questions and really hopefully hear from all of you tonight about what you are wanting to see in the next receiver.
Are there any questions?
No, it just seems to me that hasn't the process for a new receiver had already begun? I assumed that it started the day the former receiver resigned.
No, it actually has not begun, because we had wanted to make sure that we did this very process.
Okay.
And so, you know, my main goal this summer after the resignation of the former receiver was to make sure that we were ready to open school. And so we didn't put an emphasis at the time on searching for a new receiver, because I wanted to make sure we could open school successfully. Now that we've got school underway, I want to now turn our attention more towards this and really begin the process by listening and not taking action at this time. So no job posting has gone up, you know, no interview questions have been developed. None of that will occur until after we get more information from you. But thank you for the question.
Any other questions? I guess not.
Great. Mr. Brunel.
Great. And thank you, Dr. Johnson, and thank you, members of the Southbridge School Committee, for this opportunity. As Dr. Johnson mentioned, my role is to facilitate conversations within the community as to the values and the qualities that members of the community deem essential for the next receiver to be a success. Already, I've had a very idea-generating day by sitting down with high school students at the high school, as well as middle school students, to hear their reflections as to what does Southbridge need in a school leader. And those thoughts that I got from them were marvelously creative. I will leave it at that, and also just spoke to me that this community cares deeply, of course, as to who the next leader of schools are. I also had the opportunity today to sit with the leadership of the Southbridge Educational Association and to hear their thoughts as to the qualities and the values and the attributes of the next leader. And these conversations will progress in the weeks ahead. I really want to do very little talking tonight and a lot of listening. I'll be jotting down some notes as you speak, and also referring back to the tape of this conversation. But I'd like to put it to the members of the school committee to put towards just a discussion and conversation, and certainly I'll be following up with questions for you as to what you think are the values and the attributes necessary for the next receiver to be a success. So is there a member of the school committee that wants to kick off that conversation?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. Touching on a couple of different aspects, and probably one of the most important, I think, to me, is a person that possesses the mindset that student responsibility for their own decorum and effort and ultimate success is as much their responsibility as it is, if not more, than the responsibility of the people in front of them trying to deliver the education. And along with that is a person that's willing to support policy direction and enforcement of that policy that is consistent with that. One of the things that we seem to struggle with is, and this has been an ongoing issue in this community for a long period of time, is large percentages of students just not taking responsibility for their own success. And we haven't figured out a way to deal with that yet, in my opinion. So that's one of the really big ones I have. The other thing that I think is incredibly important is someone that has a demonstrated track record of mentoring and really enabling the building level leadership to be effective at what they need to do in terms of instructional management, building level management, and so forth. And so I think it's somebody that needs to understand a community like Southbridge, understand the complexities and the kinds of things that are very different from a community like Southbridge than a lot of the places that are in this state, in fact, that are very, very different. You know, you go to Cambridge, you go to some of these more wealthy communities, there's a lot of things that are very different. Somebody really needs to understand the challenges that are unique to Southbridge. And along with that is, I think, somebody who is capable of doing a lot with fewer resources than some people might be used to. People that are able to be very clever in terms of how to really get more bang for the buck, because we are not in the foreseeable future going to be a community that's going to be able to spend much, much more than minimum net school spending under the current formulas in terms of supporting our education financially. So we're not going to be able to solve problems by throwing money at it. And so we're going to have to be a little bit clever about how we manage our resources and the kinds of things we want to do, regardless of or the kinds of things that we will do. And ultimately that needs to be geared towards maximizing student success and student opportunity. And I think somebody that's got a track record of being able to do that kind of thing is really going to be important for the success of Southbridge. And that goes to some of the earlier arguments that we had in the joint council meetings about, that will lead into the sustainability. Is, once the receivership hopefully ends, that will be a model that's set in place for a new superintendent, or possibly even, whatever it might be, to be able to have the systems and structures in place for us to be able to do that. And so that's really, in a nutshell, what I can say are the most important qualities of a receiver that I see from where I sit.
Great.
And so that's my spiel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Bishop, through you. Just to start off with, I would like to echo that I think Mr. Member Page's comments that we need to have someone with experience, particularly being a superintendent, particularly in a district like ours, not overwhelmingly white or overwhelmingly wealthy district. And I think one of the most important things is we're going to need someone who's going to be able to delegate. I think one of the weakest attributes of the last receiver was she was not able to delegate to her lower staff and to the school board. And I really think that the next coming receiver needs to be better at delegating and needs to be more transparent about the process with the state. And needs to be more transparent with the public. I think another weakness of the last receiver was there was not enough public communication as to what was happening within the district. There was a lot going on, there was a lot of information there, but there wasn't a process to get that information out. And the information that was being put out at the school committee meetings in the public forums was minimal at best. So that's what I would really like to see going forward from the receiver is more transparency, a stronger delegating ability, and a better, more trusting view of the school committee than the last receiver had.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else have any thoughts on the topic? Ms. Pelican?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that under the law, a receiver can be either an individual or an organization, and I would like us to continue having, looking towards an individual as a receiver as opposed to an organization. I feel like the whole receivership model does have its problems, but I feel like an individual is perhaps more accountable to us than a nonprofit org. So, and I thought that both Mr. Page and Ms. Ryan raised some good points. So, thank you.
You all set, Mr. Tomo? Mr. Wall?
My biggest concern is we want somebody that is completely honest and will be honest with all the people in town, too. None of this, whatever happened to the other one, but I think that the townspeople have to feel comfortable with this person also.
Can I add one thing? One thing that gained a little bit of momentum under the previous curriculum sort of director. I forget, the title was changed, and that's another thing too. Is that, you know, somebody is going to blow in here and sort of tell everybody to rewrite the ship and go in a different direction. I think is probably going to be a little bit met with some resistance. And somebody that's really going to be willing to do some serious listening for a period of time before they start making sweeping decisions on directional changes. And so getting back to my point about the momentum that was established is somebody who understands the importance of really developing a productive relationship with the local business community and the local other charity communities, whether they be churches or whatever, in terms of leveraging their resources, whether it's on a voluntary basis or whatever, to really help implement the mission of where we want to take the students of the town. You know, we saw a little bit of momentum building up with that. We had a really nice discussions on, mostly it was around, you know, sort of science curriculum revision and so forth, and people with local manufacturing communities. I won't name them here, but they were very engaged and willing to participate and willing to sort of lend their efforts to it. And I think that's something that's going to be really incredibly important for a receiver, and I think that's important for a superintendent too. Somebody who's out visible in the community and out engaging with particularly you know, the business community and so forth, and so we can help cultivate the education that's going to help service the needs of those people. We're in a situation where a lot of students that graduate from here don't necessarily want to go off into the great world and do different things. They would like to be able to stay local, but be gainfully employed and contribute and so forth. And so let's listen in that broad circle in terms of what the needs are a little bit, and see if we can't put some programming in to really benefit the students in that way. And I think there's a willingness on the part of the business community to do that, and so I think that's an important attribute that the receiver should have, as somebody who has possibly a track record of doing similar things and putting some effort into that regard.
Great.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
This is a great conversation. It's helping me think of a lot. I also think that we need to have a receiver that's going to continue to solicit public input and get the public more involved in the process. I know the last receiver set up multiple groups. I was a member of the diversity group as well as Ms. Duval. And those types of groups really get different types of folks involved in the process that obviously are not continuing to be involved, and those groups have kind of fallen by the wayside with the last receiver leaving. So I would like to see those groups reestablished. I would like to see more parental involvement in the school system overall, beyond the PTA and PTO. So that's something I would really like to see the receiver do, is get more parental involvement into the school system as a whole.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Well, I have some thoughts on the topic.
Please.
I think the next receiver, first of all, has to be ethical. I think that's what we really need at this point from receivers, is someone who's ethical, okay, someone who's transparent. And I think when making a selection, I hope we would find somebody who has a proven track record, not someone we think might be good, someone who has already shown they are good. I think I would really like somebody who has competency. I'd like you to look at I really would prefer competency over ethnicity, okay? The receiver who just left, I still cannot find a skill set that would have had anybody recommend that individual for the position here in Southbridge. I'm still stunned from the day that woman arrived till the day she left. I don't know who made the decision or why the decision was made, but it certainly was not in the benefit of the students first in the community or the taxpayers. A lot of money has to be accounted for, and it's going to be. So ethical, competent are what we really need. Okay, those are my thoughts on the topic. Do you have any questions of us?
I do. I have a follow-up question, which is related, and it gets to first-year priorities. I'd love to hear from members of the school committee, when you conceive of the first year on the job for this next receiver, what would you like that next receiver to be prioritizing? Mr. Bishop, I'll go through you.
Go ahead, Doctor.
Established good, trusting relationships with the people they're working with, and good, solid, two-way communication. That, to me, is, I think, a big accomplishment if that happens in the first year.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I would repeat that I think one of the biggest things is parental engagement and parental buy-in. I think one of the biggest issues was there wasn't enough. There was an attempt, but there wasn't enough parental buy-in to the whole turnaround process. And I think that's going to be really critical going forward, getting the parents to actually believe that the establishment that's coming into place here is going to actually help them and help their families and help their students. So parental buy-in, I think, is going to be really important going forward, and it's not there right now.
Thank you.
All set, Mr. Tomo? Okay. Anyone else have anything to respond to that question? Any other questions?
No, I would open it up to any other final thoughts that you think I should be considering as I'm soliciting different groups in the
Well, I do. I have some final
Please.
thoughts. I know we have another change in the business department. The current situation is creating a situation where the fiscal stability is I just can't see it. I just cannot see. We need somebody who's going to come in and have a real understanding of what it really takes financially to run a school district of 2,100 students. I'm just looking at the money going out in truckloads, and it's astounding because at some point the taxpayers of Southbridge have to be able to sustain the infrastructure that's being built here, and I just don't know how we're going to do it. We have one of our biggest contributors to our tax base departing at the end of next year, I believe it is. This is not a wealthy community. This is not Malden, although it seems everybody who comes in here from Desi thinks it is. We are not a wealthy community. I'm worried about the financial stability of what's being created here. We're already spending last year $400,000 on unemployment. When the bubble breaks, and I got to tell you, we can't keep going this way. And I'm telling you right here tonight that the bubble is going to break financially. People are going to be terminated. We're going to have more financial woes for unemployment. I'm not trying to paint a picture of Hurricane Irma coming through Southbridge, but we have, I don't believe, sound fiscal practices in place at this point. And I mean, we have a new business department. I'm sure they're going to tell me everything's great. That's what I've heard from the last, I don't know how many business department people we've had. Just the local guys' input on things.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop.
I guess to go more pointed on that comment, because I would tend to agree with Mr. Bishop's statement that one of the biggest things that came out was, one of the big criticisms, there was a lot of administrative redundancy in this district before the state came in. I'm not seeing that change at all. There's a lot of heavy administrative staff, but I don't see enough funding going into the classroom. I don't see enough funding going into the curriculum development. I don't see enough going into training of teachers. So I'm worried that we're going to have an overproductive administration that's not going to actually have the resources necessary to provide the teachers and provide actual supports to the students in the classroom. So that would be my concern going forward, is trying to see where we can reduce or at least stem the tide of heavy administration and focus more on trying to get more resources into the classroom.
Thank you.
I think one of my final comments is, I notice at Southbridge, I really think we have to explore if we have any local viable candidates. No, I'm not looking for a job. Trust me, I'm not. Do we have any local viable candidates? I'm really had it. I think we've all had it with these ladder climber drive-by administrators who are here for a half hour. I was here a year ago and I saw the best administrative team we're ever going to have in the Southbridge district. There's not one left out of the 6. I mean, I think that the students, the staff especially, the school committee and the townspeople, they've just had it. I mean, the only people who are going to make this district better are people who have a vested interest in it, who are going to stay here and work to make it better. Hey, these people are coming in here from some architectural firm. They're going to be short-term. They're here. They're going to come in. They're going to do what they want to do and get out, okay? Dr. Johnson, he wants to go back to Malden. I don't blame him. We need people that are going to take a vested interest, okay? This will be just another notch on these folks' gun belt as it goes. I really think attention needs to be paid. Are there any viable people within the immediate region or even locally who would be interested in assuming the leadership of this district to bring it back to what it was and what it can be? So, I'm not looking for somebody from Ohio or any other place. I'm looking for people locally that can maybe step up with some coaching from DESE or whomever. We just spent an awful lot of money on coaching to Tom Burton's company, so I know we got money for coaching. I'd really like to see us look locally and see if that is a possibility. There are local superintendents in the area who have some great chops that could maybe be interested in taking on a challenge in their career, but I'm really tired of these wizards coming in from Boston. Nothing personal.
Mr. Bishop.
Go ahead, Spiro.
At least, if not locally, maybe someone from Central Mass. And I concur with the chairman. I would even like to see the new receiver move into town. You can't force someone, I understand. But that's the only way you're going to get someone to really have a vested interest, to get a feel of the community, the citizens, the students, is to actually live here, to see what happens here, and as Mr. Bishop said, have a vested interest. I know it's probably impossible, but that's the way I feel about it.
Nothing's impossible.
I would think that's definitely a priority. I think having someone local would be a benefit to the district. I also think that, I think even more importantly, experience within a district like ours is going to be vastly needed. Even if that means it's someone from another town across the state, I feel that if they have experience in a district like ours, they're going to be much more of an asset to our district compared to if they had experience within, let's look next door to Tasworth. It's not the same dynamic, it's not the same breakdown, and it's not going to provide the same level of support that we're going to be needing, at least experience support that we're going to be needing in the district. So I think that needs to be tempered with experience within a district like ours, if not ours, and making sure that it's going to be able to help make this system flourish.
Mr. Bishop? Go ahead. One comment. I agree with what everybody is saying, and we all made some valid points, but our constituents unless they're watching TV, is really not going to know what our opinions are and what we've said. Why, and I noticed this when my first 6 months here before I ran for election, why isn't the press here to report what, or are they here? Is that the Worcester paper or Southbridge? Well, what about the Worcester paper? I don't see anyone.
In regards to that, I believe that the local reporter, generally reviews our meetings on YouTube after they're aired. He lives a distance away.
Right, but I have yet to see any information coming directly from us in the local paper.
Well,
am I wrong or right?
I mean, the paper is that we don't control the Southbridge news. Okay, so I mean, it's up to them if they feel this is a newsworthy item or not to report on, I would assume. But we have all we can do to control what's going on here this evening. I mean, the news is here this evening. You're right, we haven't seen a lot of the Southbridge news, but, you know.
I mean, has the news been here every meeting? I haven't seen it. Or any news organization.
Yes, this young lady's been to a couple of them so far, so.
Okay,
she
no,
may-
I'm
she
not
may be
blaming
new
her
with you.
personally. I'm just,
Okay.
I noticed that when I first got on, that any information that came or was put in the paper came from central office. Do you agree? I'm not talking about now, I'm talking about in the past.
I'm not sure what you're referring to, Mr. Tomo.
All right, well.
Are you talking about what the previous receiver would put out there as?
Well, just this frank discussion we're having, we're making some good points. Our constituents should know where we stand on certain issues.
And that may be a point for this gentleman. Our previous receiver didn't want to hear our points, okay? We were pretty much put on the shelf, see ya. And that's pretty much, I mean, she started the superintendent's roundtable and didn't want anybody from the school committee on it. That was the mindset of the previous receiver. I refer to her as receiver number 2. So it is what that is. I'm gonna move on. Could you give us a timeline on the what, are you going to be the hiring agent? Are you going to be a consultant in the hiring process, or how's this working?
Yeah. So my role is to take the survey that's going out to all staff, surveys that are going out to families, surveys that are going out to students, and to take a hard look as to what that information is telling us about what the next leader of Southbridge Public Schools should be. To couple that with meetings like tonight, meetings like that I had earlier today with student focus groups and with teacher focus groups, with union leadership. We're having 3 general community sessions over the course of the next few weeks, and to boil that down and to make a set of recommendations to Dr. Johnston as to the values that what I heard over the course of this about month-long community engagement process that would be essential for the next receiver to have. And then from there, Mr. Bishop, the process would look like we would be putting together a position description for the receiver that would take that into account, as well as learnings from interim receiver and that team, as well as just what by regulation has to be put in that position description, rolling that out, and then using these values that have been identified by this community as the values that we would be measuring candidates against every step of the process. So we would be drafting interview questions that would be based upon these values. So for example, if one of the values is trust and inclusiveness and desire for partnership, we would be asking material questions of candidates through the stages based upon those values. Okay. Is that helpful? It
does. I'm going to direct my next question to Dr. Johnson. Do we have a timeline where we will have another receiver on board here?
Right. So as I mentioned before, quality is what matters the most to me more than speed. We are prepared to be here for the long term, the long term meaning this year, if we need to. Usually a process like this picks up momentum, and so when we post the position in October, I anticipate that we'll receive a fair amount of interest. and we will need to screen through and interview applicants. Ultimately, our goal is to bring finalists before the acting commissioner, Jeff Wolfson. It will be his choice as to who the receiver will be, and I'm hopeful that we could get through that process by Thanksgiving, but it's really about what the market bears. And if we're not ready, if we don't have a receiver, then we're going to keep at it until we get the right person.
And would I be right in assuming that the contract for the next receiver would be a 3-year contract?
So we have not decided that at this time.
That's a yes, I'm going to take it. Okay, I'll take that as a yes. I don't think anybody would take a job in this position with less than a 3-year contract, being in education as long as I've been. Okay, any other questions that anybody would like to ask this gentleman while he's here?
Please.
Well, thank you for coming out. I'm sure you came out. Do you have any questions of us?
I don't. Thank you for the insights that you gave me tonight. I appreciate it, and thank you, Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Bruno.
Thank you. I could go on, but no sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, that's right, my turn. Okay. Next is the receivers updates. Dr. Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. So first tonight, I wanted to introduce you to Seth Racine from Open Architects, who's overseeing our business and finance and human resource operations. And so really glad to have Mr. Racine with us here tonight, and really to turn the microphone over to him for a few minutes to introduce himself and his work that's underway right now.
Sure. So thanks. It's nice to meet everyone. Just as a little background, I have experience in a number of communities in Massachusetts over the last decade, including Springfield, Lawrence, and Boston. And through those financial leadership roles, it's both about creating a long-term financially sustainable model, as was mentioned earlier tonight, but also about designing and creating the right financial structures and systems to support that. Every community is unique, and you want to make sure that you provide the right tools and systems that are able to support the vision of the district. And this is a long-term process, and so I am really looking forward to working on that with you and with the receiver and the rest of the community. As it was mentioned again today, about empowering school leaders, empowering department heads to drive the work forward and have the budget support those plans.
Anyone have any questions?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Racine. I'm actually going to go to the microphone for the next part of the presentation because we're going to begin with a video. So I'm very pleased tonight to begin my remarks and my update for the committee with a video actually that demonstrates some of the community partnership that's been discussed tonight about involvement between our band students and SJC Drums, who are very generous in helping to help us refurbish some of the equipment that we have for the band at the beginning of this year. So I wanted to bring some of the experiences of our students directly to you in this short video tonight.
What's up, everybody? The Southbridge marching band here. We're refurbishing a bunch of the drums, putting some new heads on there, and with Zenith Rad marching bass drum heads for the Southbridge Pioneers. We're in Southbridge, so really important to kind of be part of the community. So we got all them refurbishing all their marching drums that were in pretty rough shape. So stoked to see you back out there this fall. Late Southbridge, rocking the new drums. So check it out. What's up, everybody? We got a bunch of people from the Southbridge marching band here. We're refurbishing a bunch of the drums, putting some new heads on.
Sorry, it's on repeat. But I thought that you would appreciate seeing the this partnership that existed and really benefiting our students as they began the year. So bringing a local voice to the meeting.
I think we need more of that.
Right, right.
In terms of student participation with different companies, topics, I think it's great.
That really is at the core of the redesign work that we're doing for the high school and including the middle school and high school students ultimately, and really having pathways that can lead to meaningful employment options for them when they graduate. So very along these lines is what we want to build in an even more strategic way for our young people here.
I actually have a couple friends who work at a drum company, and I heard about this, and I'm wicked excited about this, and I would agree with Mr. Thomo. We need to see more things like this. I think it's a benefit to the district, and it's nice to be putting out more positive news like this, and sometimes it's just little things like this that help get you through all the hard work that has to be done, so thank you.
Absolutely. Great. So to continue on with the announcements that I have for tonight, the school year began on August 22nd when we welcomed our faculty back to the middle high school, into the auditorium there, with the district-wide assembly, and the highlight of which was a keynote address by author Carmen Agrediti, who came to us at no cost from Scholastic and gave a very inspirational speech and a great way to kick off the school year. I appreciate that Ms. Ryan and Ms. Duvall were there from the school committee to kind of share in the celebration of the beginning of the new year with our teachers. Another important point about the beginning of the year is that we did have 4 days of professional development with our teachers as we began the year, and most of the professional development was school-based, and so to the point that was made before about let's empower the leaders of our schools to design the instruction that we know we need for our children. And that's really what happened during those 4 days of teachers and administrators working together to prepare curriculum and instruction for the beginning of the new year. Also, very importantly, we focused on safety. We focused on improving the climate and culture of our buildings, as well as just emergency preparedness. And in this day and age, we just have to be ready for any type of emergency in our schools. So Ms. Farrick actually graciously went around the district and provided customized training to each of our schools in 6 locations, including Southbridge Academy, to make sure that our teachers really understood what they need to do to be ready to respond in the event of an emergency in their buildings. We want that confidence to be there in the unlikely event that we have to use those strategies during the year. The school year began for our students on August 28th, and we really heard about a very successful opening for our students, teachers, and families. And what we've been hearing about a lot is an improvement in school culture. And so keep in mind, for example, at the middle and high school, we've done some work in the way of things like professional development to really support the teachers as they begin this year with a common language and a common way of doing business related to bringing out the best in our students in the classroom and creating a very positive working environment for them from within the school. And I was pleased that I was able to see it firsthand last week. And really also some enthusiasm for our enhanced curriculum resources that we also launched this year. I've also mentioned before that we've really tried to put more of the emphasis on the improvement at the school level, and so rolling out our school improvement plans has also been a highlight of this new school year. And so another important thing is we distributed handbooks at the beginning of this year. I know that's a simple thing, but it's a system that needed to be put in place and kind of a way to keep that sustainable into the future, that we provide our families with the handbook and request that they sign and return an acknowledgement form so that we know that everyone is knowledgeable of what the requirements are to be successful as a student in our district. That handbook was translated into Spanish, and so we really were able to make it highly accessible for our students and families as we begin this school year. So as we move into the school year, we've already had some, I think, very good things for our students happening within the school, such as yesterday, we had a former NBA player, you may have heard of him before, Chris Aaron, come and speak to our students about his path in his life, of his experiences as a drug addict, and how he's turned his life around, and a really powerful message for our students to avoid such pitfalls in their own lives, and really how to speak out if they are beginning to follow that path and how to get off of it while they're in school. And I had a chance to call Dr. Townsell last night, the high school principal, and just ask him how it went. And not surprisingly, because I've in my previous work as a superintendent, I've had Mr. Heron come and speak to my students in the district where I used to work, and he said it had the same profound impact on Southbridge students as I know Mr. Heron is having in his the work that he's doing across our state. So pleased to have his presence with us and to really emphasize a message of sobriety for our students. Last Friday, as I mentioned, I had the chance to go with our central office team to the high school and do a walkthrough with Dr. Townsell, and just to see and sit in classes and listen to what our students are experiencing and to see the curriculum our teachers are delivering. And what I like to do is I like to bend down and talk to students and say, how long have you been here? And every student I talked to had been at Southbridge High School for more than a year. So then I asked them, what are you experiencing? What's different this year than last year? Because we really want improvement. We want this year to be a positive, fresh start for our students. And almost to a student, they told me about the care and support that they're receiving from our teachers this year. And they said that they felt like the teachers were very much on their side this year, very motivated to help them learn. One student called the teachers generous in their support. And I really like that word, that he said that they were generous in their commitment to the students. And so there was a lot of encouragement for me in the words the students used to describe who their teachers are to them. I've already mentioned the school improvement plans, and those will be going before site-based councils that include teachers, administrators, parents, and community members. And so just keep in mind that that's a way of adding more of that transparency about what are our schools about and what are they doing at the school level, where we really want the individual school community to know what we're doing in our schools and to have voice into that. We are in the process of further developing our professional development for the remainder of this year. So we have 3 full professional development days and 5 half days coming up. Our next professional development day will be on September 29th. And we have already, I think, some very solid plans in place, such as at the elementary level. We'll be working with our teachers on more effective assessment and intervention strategies for our struggling readers, because we know we have to get literacy right in the early grades. In addition, right now, to gather more input, particularly on this, this topic of what we want in the next receiver, we've put together surveys that are going out to parents, teachers, students, and available for the community through our website. And they're asking not only the questions that you were just asked about the qualities and characteristics for the next receiver, but we're also wanting to kind of benchmark people's experiences with our schools so we can use that to continue to refine our plans, not to bring in new ideas, but to help to further refine our plans as we implement the turnaround plan. Another important piece that you've mentioned tonight as well is about communication and finding out and having transparency about what's happening in the schools. And that's always a challenge. That's something that, I think all school districts have to continually work at. And this came up in the joint meeting that we had with the town council last month is there a newsletter? Is there some way of getting the word out to the community about what's happening in Southbridge? And I said at the time, we're in the process of developing it. So we will have a monthly newsletter. The first one actually comes out this week. I've seen the draft. It looks great, simple, short. It needs to be, in this day and age, we've got to have something that immediately gets to the point for our parents and community members. And so it's about a 2-page document, and in it, we are looking to always include a source of data, something that we can all hang our hats on and say, this is useful information about the progress our students are making in school. And so look forward to seeing that first community newsletter developed by Amy Carawan from our central office coming out later this week, both in Spanish and in English. Finally, open houses, or not finally, almost finally. Open houses are taking place even as we speak. Tonight we had 2, both for the high school and for Eastford Road. I had a chance to talk to Mary Scribzik, the principal of Eastford Road, on my way over here tonight, and she told me that it was very well attended, a really positive event tonight, so pleased that we are getting our open houses underway. So in addition to tonight at Eastford Road and Southbridge High School, tomorrow we have Charlton Street and West Street schools, and Thursday, Southbridge Middle School and Southbridge Academy. So this will be a busy week for our schools, and we appreciate our teachers being so involved and committed to those open houses. And then just a reminder that I sent a memo with follow-up items from the last school committee meeting and the joint meeting with the town council, and a memo went to school committee members and town councilors with responses to the questions that they asked. A few staffing updates. I'm really pleased to let you know that by a very strong majority, the Southbridge Education Association ratified their 3-year contract And so we sent you that news and a summary, an executive summary of what's in that contract after they approved it at the end of August. In addition, we've completed our hiring process to get the new year started, the new school year started, and so we hired approximately 70 new teachers and had a 3-day induction program in August. And I've mentioned before, but one of the days was focused on helping our new teachers appreciate Southbridge as a community and the diversity and the beauty, actually, that is in the natural resources and in this community. And so a really positive way to help our teachers understand the assets that our families bring, that this community brings to the equation, and help to shift the beliefs about the students that we're serving here in Southbridge as we start with our new teachers. Some of our veteran teachers actually heard about the experience, and they've said that they want something similar for themselves too. So we will continue to consider that. I know that in the past there have been concerns about the number of open positions that haven't been able to be filled. And at this time we have one open position for a math teacher at Southbridge Academy, and we are working diligently to fill that position. But I'm very, somewhat comforted actually to tell you that we have filled so many positions, and I feel like we have very high quality educators working with our students all across the district. And so that's really my update for you. Certainly welcome any questions that you might have, but I hope you find this helpful to understand some of the key things that have been happening, key activities that have been happening as we start this new school year.
Anyone have any questions for Dr. Johnson? Go ahead, Ray.
One quick question. The memo that you distributed to us and the town council, will that be available to the public as well in case they're interested? There were a lot of financial questions in there that were answered.
Sure. I hadn't thought about that, but we could certainly look to put that on our website, so let me investigate
I
that.
think that would be useful.
Great. Thank you for that feedback.
And possibly even this written document of your update to us. I mean, you kind of went over everything, but in case people want to look at it and reflect on it, it's very useful. Again, opening the lines of communication for people that might not be seeing this particular broadcast and who are interested.
Sure, absolutely.
Right, yeah.
Those are simple ways of getting the word out further. Thank you.
Anyone else with questions? Okay, Dr. Johnson, the memo that Ray was alluding to, are we ready to have conversations on this evening, or?
I leave it up to you. I can certainly come back to my seat so I have it in front of me.
Yeah, please. As Dr. Johnson alluded to, we had a joint meeting with the town council and the school committee, and many issues were raised, some by people in the audience talking about the elementary school libraries. Many questions were raised, and I brought up a question about the revolving accounts. It came to my attention that a large number of dollars from revolving accounts that are earmarked for specific operations in the district were used to, I've got to say, balance the 2018 budget. And as I reviewed it, I mean, we were looking at just south of $2 million. The largest chunk, $1.5 million coming out of the federal lunch program, the school lunch program. I mean, that's a sizable amount, roughly, well, geez, an awful lot of it. It left 2/3 of it they took to balance this year's budget. And $115,000 out of the facilities rental, on and on. But it's, like I say, it's just south of $2 million we had to borrow from revolving accounts to balance the current school budget. What do we do next year? That's my major concern. What are we going to do next year? I also noticed that we budgeted $175,000 for unemployment for this current school year. Last year we spent $400,000. I don't know where we're going to come up with the money, should we, and in all probability we will need additional funding, but I guess we'll cross that bridge. As I've said throughout this process with the state, I have major concerns about the financial stability and sustainability of what's taking place. I've asked the town council chairman to audit the books for the past school year. There are some issues and items in there that really need to be addressed. The townspeople need to know what happened. Why did the previous receiver leave? What took place? I'm not going to say it publicly, but it's out there. It's time for the DESE to show us that transparency we've been talking about. Okay, I'm going to continue to bang this drum, Doc. The people need to know what took place. It's a lot of money. And I pay taxes here. That's a rarity for most of the people working in the district, especially at the highest levels. I'm good. Anybody else have anything? Moving on.
Mr. Bishop,
Go ahead.
if you don't mind,
Go ahead.
I wonder if there are specific questions that you have from within what you just threw out?
Well,
because-
I just threw in there the fact that we had $2.5 million roughly just south of that in the federal lunch program. And we borrowed, I don't know, we took $1.5 million of that and put it into this year's budget. I mean,
So I would actually like to be able to explain that if you
I would love to hear an explanation. Thank you.
Right. So revolving accounts are used regularly, actually, to support certain line items. So this is not unheard of or out of ordinary, actually, for there to be the use of these funds. These funds should be spent down, not to the penny. And I think what's good news about what you have in front of you is there remained a balance in each of these accounts. So last year we didn't empty them out. In fact, we spent them down. These accounts just shouldn't grow and grow and grow without any spending activity against them. We should be using them as we bring revenue in. We should be expending it on allowable costs, and that's really what happened last year. And particularly school lunch, using those funds to help pay for our lunch program is what we expect to do. And so we put in this that, we assume how much we will be gaining in during this school year. So take school lunch, for example. For the fiscal year 18 budget, we're assuming $1.5 million in revenue, and as of September 1st, we start the year with a balance of $835,000. So that's telling you that we intend to make, during this year, we will continue to bring in revenue and then use it as necessary as well. So this is what's in this part right here is not a picture of a misuse of funds. It's telling you how we've actually used revolving.
I'm absolutely not implying any misuse of funds. I am not implying that at any level. Karen Hanoi sat here at that joint meeting and said every bit of the expenditure was appropriate. My question is, if we continue to use that money, when does it run out? Mm-hmm. When do we, next year, where do we get this $2 million from? I mean, we need to put our budget in line so we don't need to really hit these revolving accounts the way we had to hit them this year. I mean, our budget, from everything I can see, and again, we do not get a lot of information on it. Everything I can see is we are spending greater than we are able to tax the citizens. Mr. Tomo, go ahead.
To the receiver, so in other words, we have a balance in this year's budget of over 800,000, 835?
Correct.
Cash sitting there.
Correct.
To be used for important things?
Related to school lunch. Only related to school lunch.
Okay, related to school lunch. Okay. So what's already been taken out, was that related to school lunch?
Yes.
That Mr. Bishop was talking about?
Correct. Any use of the funds related to school lunch, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Racine, is there anything else you'd want to add relative to this conversation?
No, I think it was said well. Summarized well.
Thanks.
So just to follow up, so in other words, with this money, we need elementary librarians, correct? I mean, there's no librarians for the elementary level. Is that correct?
So we don't have librarians. We have other.
Access, right.
We have access to the library, and we have other specialists providing learning opportunities for our students outside of librarians, but students definitely still have access to our libraries.
But librarians also play a significant role in working with teachers. When a teacher wants to bring their students down, and I don't have to tell you this, you know this, to work on a project, the librarian helps that teacher prepare for the projects, shows students where to get the information, how to access. All that's going to be missing. And I think it's important to have librarians at that elementary level. But it is what it is.
Appreciate it. Okay.
Okay, no, I do. One of the questions that was put to Dr. Johnson was the 18 budget included unclassified in the amount of $420,000. I believe I questioned what the plan was for that money, and Dr. Johnson did very nicely articulate the expenditures of where that money's going. I mean, again, that's the discretion of the receiver. But I'm happy to see that we were able to identify what the needs were at this point in going into the school year. We have any other questions of Dr. Johnston? He seems to come here for a monthly beatdown. But you have your job to do, and I think we have our jobs to do, so that's why we go there. Let's move on to item D, next meeting date, October 3rd. Anybody have a problem with that date? Right here in the hall at 7 p.m.?
Just as a note for the public, this is not at the same time or the same time of the month as previous meetings, correct?
Correct, yes. We are 1 week earlier.
Yeah.
All right, and those dates do float depending upon, the needs of the members as well as the receiver. So, members forum, does anybody have anything would like to discuss? Mr. Val?
No.
Ms. Peliquin? Ms.
Yes.
Ryan?
I had actually a number of parents contact me over the last month about issues with bus transportation. In particular, I had one parent who had a situation where she, her daughter goes to Charlton Street and her son goes to Eastford Road, and the bus stops in which they both have to go to are on opposite sides of the street, and they both come at the same time. So she can't possibly make both bus stops to accommodate her kids, and she filled out the form twice and got denied twice. And the way it was explained to me and the route was shown was, it was a simple, just extra, half a minute reroute of the bus would have made this parent's life far more simple. And I had concern, especially with Lebanon Hill, about the stop halfway down the hill, especially with the coming winter. If we have a harsh winter, how hard that's going to be for students to make it down halfway down the hill. So there seems to be a lot of disdain for the current busing situation, and I was wondering what you're doing on the ground to help at least alleviate most of those concerns.
Sure. So we have had concerns that have come to us, and we really tried to alleviate as many as we could prior to the beginning of the school year. So we had a lot of collaboration with the bus company in August as the routes became available, and made some, I think, significant changes to improve the situation. So, for example, the middle school and high school students are no longer bused together, and we did that without adding any cost to our bus contract. And so, I think that we could all agree that having sixth graders and high school students on the bus is often kind of a recipe for disaster. And so I think it's a really positive thing that we've been able to separate them, and actually because the schools have different times as well. It led to allowing the schools to create the schedules they need for their students this year. And since then, once we began the school year, we have heard some various concerns, such as the YMCA bus often being late. And we resolved that concern by making sure that we have adequate buses on the road to get the students from the elementary schools to the YMCA, and not having buses come as late as 3:40 in the afternoon to the elementary schools. So as we've been made aware of issues, we've worked very diligently to solve them. We can't always solve every transportation issue, and the one that you're bringing up, particularly about the Eastford Road bus, and was it Charlton Street? Is one that I'm just not aware of. And so I would encourage, if that family, as you represent families, if you wanted to let us know more details, we'd be glad to look into them individually. We really have looked at every individual case that's come before us and really tried to make the best choice that we possibly can, keeping safety and on-time arrivals as our number one focus.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that concern because she seemed very frustrated, especially getting denied twice for that requisition.
Sure.
So she was very upset. So thank you.
Mr. Tomo, anything? No, all set. Thank you. All set. Dr. Page?
All set.
Thank you. I just would like to take a moment to thank the Chaprari family from SJC. The local family has been great to the community. I know they're just moving into a new operations down on Mill Street. Wish them the best of success down there. And I want to thank Dr. Tamajian for reaching out and establishing that articulation with those folks down there. They're great people. And we look forward to a great band program coming up. Anybody else have anything for the good of the order? Okay, if not, I'll accept the motion to adjourn this evening.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor? Thank you. Have a great night and a great week.